Okay, so we're back with the second part of Dr. Vaskas' testimony. When I left off, I told you guys that we were really going to start getting into some of the medical aspects. And for the next minute, you're going to hear more than once her constantly mention the bleeding that Alexee was going through at the time. So let's just get into it.
And did you notice anything about her that was different from when you had seen her in the patient room?
There was a significant amount of blood in the bathroom. It was everywhere. It was on the floor and the toilet. And so, if you recall, I said we had to call in an ultrasound tech. But when I saw the amount of blood, I just was concerned that there was an emergency of some kind happening. And so I wanted to, even though I didn't have the right probe, I thought, let me just look and see if I can see if she has this ruptured ectopic pregnancy. And so I myself and a nurse walked her back to the room, and I got the ultrasound. And again, I didn't have the right piece of equipment. I had to call in the tech for that. But I couldn't really see much with the ultrasound, but she was bleeding a fair bit. And so at that point, we proceeded to perform a pelvic examination so I could figure out either how much she was bleeding, or if she was having a miscarriage was another possibility. And so, yeah, I'm not sure else out there.
Yeah, pulled from tending to her to tend to another issue.
I do not recall. Well, let me rephrase. I performed the ultrasound. I left the room to get the room set up for a pelvic exam. The nurses had to get some equipment. We went back in, and I performed the pelvic examination, and there was so much bleeding. It took me a very long time. The cervix was completely open, and so at that point I began thinking, well, she must be having a miscarriage. And there was a lot of bleeding, and so sometimes in order to help stabilize a patient if they're having an active miscarriage, we have to evacuate all of the blood and other products from the uterus or from the cervix. And so it took me about 15 minutes, and there was just really significant amounts of clot. And so just as I had finished the examination, the charge nurse did come into the room and said, Dr. Vaskas, I need you outside immediately.
Okay, let's stop there again. So as you guys can hear, it's just the bleeding, the clots that a lot of people who have went through placental abruptions have been commenting on some of my other videos. All of those were there. And so now she has a wide open cervix. She has a positive pregnancy test. She has another test that tells her how pregnant Alexee was. And none of this, she's still like, well, maybe it's a miscarriage, maybe it's this. Nothing processes in your mind that she just had a baby, or that she was full term and that there's something else going on here. I mean, I know she is just an emergency room doctor, and I'm going to give her that this is not her specialty. This is why they transfer everybody up to Loveless. Second, she got that positive pregnancy test, and there was some pains and stuff going on. She should have put those orders into Loveless, but she didn't. You know, again, she's sitting here trying to figure things out and do ultrasounds and all this stuff, which are not in her purview. She makes it clear, as does Gary Mitchell, that this is not what this hospital does. Anyway, we're now going to go into the section of once HT goes in, calls her out, the whole situation with the baby. So, yeah, let's get into it again.
And so the nurse stayed in the room in order to help get the patient cleaned up. And then I walked out into the hallway, and charge nurse HT informed me that a dead baby had been found in the trash can in the bathroom.
Okay. So when you got this information from HT, what did you do from there?
Well, my first obligation, or my first choice was I wanted to see if the baby was alive and needed resuscitation. And so I said, where is this baby? And they brought the trash can to me, and I grabbed it and I just ran with it into a resuscitation room, and I turned it over onto the bed, and the baby came out and was on the gurney.
Okay. Can you describe how the baby was situated in the trash can when you saw it?
I never looked in the trash can. My priority was in assessing for resuscitation, and so I didn't look in. I just turned it over and put it on the resuscitation gurney so that I could assess whether or not the baby was alive, if there were signs of life, if the baby needed resuscitation.
All right. And so when you did turn the trash can over onto the bed, you said the baby came out. What was with him when he came out?
I don't recall. All I can tell you is that the baby was cold and pulseless and dead.
Both pulseless and dead. Did you make any attempts to resuscitate him?
I did not. I assessed for breathing, which there was none, pulse, which there was none, and the baby was cold, which suggested to me that he had been in the trash can without air for a longer period than what would make for the remotest chance of a successful resuscitation.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify something, that the baby was never dumped out of the garbage can. We do have a photo after the baby was removed from the garbage can showing all of the trash and bags and everything that was still in the garbage can. The baby was actually picked up and placed onto the gurney. There's another video pinned up to the top of my profile where you can kind of see into the room, see when they put the baby on the bed and, you know, see his hair and everything else like that. But the baby was never dumped. Whether that's a big deal to some people or not, whatever. But just kind of wanted to clarify that. Let's move on.
That's correct. I took the can and physically turned it over to assess the contents, and then we didn't touch anything.
Okay.
Really, the temperature was cool, and I also did not want to contaminate if it was a crime scene.
I added that little snippet from her police interview because I wanted you guys to see something where they kept talking about that the baby was cool. They had checked the baby for vital signs. They did all this stuff, but then she says that she dumped the baby over and didn't touch anything. She also, in the police interview, called the baby a crime scene, that she didn't want to contaminate it. So I'm just curious on how all of these assessments were done, supposedly by multiple people, but yet nobody touched the baby because the baby was a crime scene. So they're going to have to sort that one out too.
I instructed them to call the police and that we would notify the patient of what had happened with police present. Once I made that determination, I then proceeded to understand that the bleeding from the patient's cervix was from a delivery. And I did not know where the placenta was or if she had retained products of conception. And so my attention turned to stabilizing the patient and making sure she didn't die from a postpartum complication.
And so you said you didn't want to speak with her or about this baby until law enforcement had arrived, right?
Correct.
Did law enforcement arrive?
Yes.
Okay. And were you able to inform or speak with Ms. Trevizo about this baby?
Yes. I went into the room with a nurse, and then I believe there were 2 officers, and I informed her that we had found a dead baby in the bathroom.
Okay. And did Ms. Trevizo make any statements about this baby?
Yes.
What did she say?
It just came out of me and wasn't moving, so I put it in the trash can. The patient's mother was present, and she began yelling, I knew it, I knew it.
Objection.
Okay, so to go over that last part before we get into section 3, there was a couple things there. She kept saying that they never bothered to say anything to her until law enforcement arrived. And that's important because you guys remember that HT says that he went in there and questioned her and told her about the baby and all this stuff happened, which never occurred. This is the first time that they ended up saying something about the baby. She says that Alexee told her, it just came out of me, so I put it in the trash. That's actually not what she said. She said, it just came out of me. I didn't know what to do. And her mother's like, Alexee, we talked about this. And she was like, I was scared. Dr. Vaskas says that the mother's like, I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. Again, that did not happen. And there's another key part of that. If you listen, she talks about that she was concerned. She didn't want her patient to die. That is the amount of blood that Alexee was, the blood loss that she was suffering from, that the doctor didn't want her patient to die. We're going to go into part 3 of Dr. Vaskas' testimony. Gary Mitchell is going to question her as well as the judge. Hopefully we can get it done in the next part.